Okay, so we're ready to move on to part 2. Let me show you the instruction sheet. Would be the neck, or more appropriately referred to in the blueprints as the Saucer Pylon. Look at the beautiful detail on this. You see the little docking port. You see that beautiful neck that's going to be illuminated. See the other side. This would be the port side. You see where the photon torpedo bays are. And of course this will be lit, so what I'm going to do is, well, first thing I'm going to do, you see that it's got like a slick film on it. You can see the shine. I'm going to wash it with a degreaser and dry them really well and get them ready for prepping for priming. Because this is going to be lit on the inside and they're going to be lights, this will be primed on both sides. So let me get them washed and I'll show you what they look like when they're all nice and clean. Okay, so they're nice and clean. They're washed. And I don't know if you can see it as much as you can feel it. The surface feels a lot cleaner. It has almost like that squeaky clean kind of feel. You know, don't take what I'm going to say wrong, because I love this model. I think it's amazing. But I recently did the 1/350 scale original Enterprise, the 350. The 50th anniversary. And that model just seems so thick and meaty. Nice and sturdy. The neck was really, really thick. I mean, all the parts on that ship were really thick, and this one just seems very thin in comparison. I mean, that being said, I think this is an amazing model. The detail is really great and beautiful. It's going to look beautiful, but I just don't think it doesn't feel as solid as the original series one does. Anyway, moving on, you can see the little ports where the little pods dock. I have the photo etch pieces that go in there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put them in and I'm going to glue them with the Plastruct bonding. And I'll show you what it looks like once they're in. Okay, so they're both in, the port side and the starboard side. You can see the detail. Let me try to get close for you to see. The detail that was there was pretty nice. This is just a little bit of just a little bit extra, just to make it stick out just a little bit extra, especially when the paint and the primer go on. And they're all nice and clean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the glue dry, and then I'm going to prime these pieces. And I'll show you what it looks like once it's primed. Okay, so it had a chance to dry. And they're all nice and primed. Well, this side is anyway. Incidentally, what I was using, the gray primer, that was the last of the gray. I decided to try something different. I got the same kind of primer, the Bullseye 123, but I'm going to go with the white primer this time because I'm going to prime the inside, and I figured that the white would help. So, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to prime the inside, and I'll show you guys what that looks like when that's all set. Okay, so it's been a few hours and it had a chance to dry. It dried nicely. Let me show you the other one. So I'm all ready for now to put in the interior paint, which I like the spray paint, the gloss white. And I'll show you what that looks like when that's all sprayed on and dry. Okay, so the primer had a nice time period where it's all nice and dry. You see it's bright white. This is going to be good to reflect the light. There's going to be a light strip that's going to go up against the back. And there's going to be lights that light up her lovely neck. So now we're ready to put on the finish coat, and which of course is my Rust-Oleum, the high gloss. And I'll show you what that looks like when the final finish coat is put on. Okay, so I gave him a nice coat. Both sides have been primed and painted, the inside bright white and the outside. See how nice that came out? And we can go ahead now, we can start putting the Aztec pattern on the paint masks. So I'm going to start with the starboard side first. And I got the paint masks, the sections cut out. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to prep them. And then we're going to get ready, we're going to put them on. Okay, so the pieces for the mask are all prepped. And like I said, I'm going to do the starboard side first. The tape, or the frisket, is on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to peel off the backs, and I'm going to apply them to the surface of the model, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so the masks are on, and what I got to do now is I got to carefully remove the tape, or the frisket, and then it'll be ready to start painting. I'll show you what it looks like once the tape is off. Okay, so the tape is off with the frisket, and I've said before, you really got to be patient with this stuff. Everything will stick. It's like it sticks everywhere you don't want it to stick, and where you want it to stick, it doesn't. Anyway, I can start removing sections now and start applying the 5-color Aztec painting. And I think I'm going to start with the red. Alright, so the starboard side is all done. It's all painted. Well, the Aztec painting is done anyway. What I gotta do now is I gotta do the blue, And I'm not sure if I'll do that when the halves are together or if I'll do that now, but for now, we're going to move on to the port side. And that's ready to put the masking on, so I'll show you what it looks like as I put the masks on. Okay, so we did the port side, and I put the masks on, and I removed sections, and I put that particular color on, and I removed the masks, and it's all set. Now we can think about putting it together, the two halves. I think I'm gonna do now, as you can see, I'm probably gonna clean out the windows, and I'm gonna put the windows in. So let's get the windows ready to install, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so I went ahead and I put all the windows in. The two sides aren't attached, by the way. I just did it so the windows could dry. Parts 218 and 219 were a little tricky. I had to do some trimming to get them in. Now that that's all done, I think we can go ahead and we can start doing the wiring on the inside. I think the first thing I'm going to do is think about lighting the inside, the interior windows, and I'm probably going to use a LED strip, and I'll show you in a little bit more detail when it's out. Alright, so I think what I'm going to do is I got it hooked up just to show you. It's a loose connection, so it doesn't look very bright, but I think I'm going to put some LED tape and glue it into sections of each side facing each other in different locations. That way there can illuminate the saucer pylon so all the windows light up. I'll run separate lights down to these little spotlights that come up on the side of the neck. And when I get things all cut up and ready to go, I'll show you what I'm going to do. Alright, this is what I think I'm going to do. It's not set in stone yet. It gave me the idea from the other Enterprise, the original, the 50th anniversary that I did. I had hot glued a lot of the LED strips into place. And that's what I did on the saucer pylon for the original. On the inside, I put the LED tape. I just kind of snugged them in because they fit under the window. And I was able to have the three. And I'm thinking that I'm going to hot glue them into place. And then I'll put, let's see, probably one over here for that part, for the illumination. That'll have the inside lit up. That'll light up the outside. Now it seems to me like there's two lights. I don't know if this front one, the way it protrudes, it's kind of triangular shaped, if it's going to light up this area and light up the back, because it seems like there's two different lights. There are two sections that the light is supposed to be dispersed in. And I hope I don't have to put 2 bulbs in, but I'll see how that works out. I might have to put a bulb for each one. But I'll plan on that. And let me think about what I'm going to do. I'll come up with a plan, and when I know for sure what I'm going to do, I'll show you what I'm going to start doing. Alright, what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to put one 5mm bulb on each side, because the light kind of gets dispersed. I don't know if you can see it that well on camera. And it'll also help with lighting up the bottom windows. But I'm going to put a 5mm bulb on each side, the light strip on each side, and I'll see if I need to add some more light. So let me go ahead, I'm going to wire it up, get it all ready to put in, and then I'll put it in loosely, and I'll show you guys what I mean. Alright, let me give you a little update. I got all the soldering done, and what I did then was I hot glued each light into place. You can see the LED. Again, that's 5mm. And the LED strip. And I hot glued the base, the wires, to keep them from moving. Just in case. You don't want the connections to come off when the model's all together and you can't have access to it. And this is all set. So what I'm going to do is I'll fit the pieces together loosely, and I'll light it up and I'll show you what it looks like lit. Okay, I got it hooked it up to a temporary power supply. That's why it's flickering a little bit. Let me go ahead, I'll put the halves together and show you what it looks like. Okay, so I put the 2 halves together, and I got it hooked up to the temporary power supply. That's why it's not very steady. You can see the LED strips are doing a pretty good job. Let me show you the other side. See, as soon as I move it, it's going to go out. So everything is all set. So the lights are in position. The windows are lit. And now we can go ahead and we can work on the photon torpedoes. And I'll show you what I'm going to do for that. Okay, so moving on to the photon torpedo tubes, you can see it's a clear piece. And referring back to my plans, I'm going to be putting in 2 red LEDs. They're going to be 2 by 3 by 4 millimeters. And they're going to fit perfectly right in to the backs. But anyway, it's all clear. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to mask off the ends, and then I'll prime it. And then I'll paint it black. But I got to figure out how to mask the ends off first. So when I figure out how to do that, either with tape or if I come up with something, that'll be the next step. Okay, so this is what I did. In order to try to mask it off, I tried putting pieces of tape and it just didn't look right. It didn't fit. So what I tried doing was I took some Elmer's glue, and what I'm hoping is, because the area to be masked is indented, and it make a nice little reservoir for the glue. So what I'm hoping is, when it dries, I can go ahead and I can prime it and paint this, and then later on just pop out the glue bits. I'm hoping that'll work. But when the glue is dry, we'll move on to the next step. I'm going to prime it and then I'm going to paint it. Okay, so you can see it kind of cleared up. So the glue is dry now, and I'm hoping this is going to work. So let's go ahead and we're going to prime it right now. Okay, so I'm going to prime it right now. I put it on some tape so I could hold it, and nothing will spray up from the back on the inside. In addition to that, I also have that part at the base of the neck that I'm also going to prime. That's going to be black. So let me go ahead and I'll give them each a good healthy coat of primer, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so while the primer is drying, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to prepare the lights for the photon torpedoes. Again, I'm going to use the 2mm by 3mm by 4mm, and they fit perfectly into the Polar Lights 1350 model kit. There's like a little slot, and they fit perfectly in. So let's go ahead, I'll show you the bulbs, and then I'll show you how to prepare them. Okay, so I got the bulbs. You can see how they're rectangular. And I got the resistors. Remember, if you have your LED, you can't just connect it to the battery, you'll blow the bulb out. You have to have a resistor. And the resistor goes on the longer leg, which is the positive. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to solder these resistors on, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's ready to move on to the next step. Okay, so the resistors are glued on. And remember to use your flux to get the solder to stick. And I know I do a sloppy job, but at least it'll do the trick. So the next step is I'm going to wire the leads on, and of course black goes to negative and red goes to positive. And I'll put the wire leads on, I'll solder them on, and then I'll show you what it looks like when we're ready to test the lights. Okay, so I went ahead and I soldered the leads on. Again, please excuse my messy soldering. What we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and we're going to test the bulbs just to make sure they work. Okay, so I hooked them both up to a temporary power supply that's going on to the battery. You can see it's working perfectly. This one is hooked up to another temporary power supply, and it's working fine. So what I'm going to do now is I don't want them to short, so I'm going to I'm going to put some black tape over the leads so there's no danger of them shorting out. Okay, so I covered them in tape. You don't really have to go nuts, but I figured all the extra protection, there's really nothing wrong with that, because once it's in the model, it's not going to be accessible, and it's probably not going to disconnect, but you never know, and I'd rather be safe than sorry. So everything is nice and secure, and the photon torpedo tube lights are all set to wire into the Saucer Pylon. So we're ready to move on to the next step. Okay, so it's nice and dry. You can see it's all covered pretty well. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to spray paint these pieces black. And I'm going to use the same kind of paint that I use for the interior, except this one's black, it's not white. So I'm going to paint the pieces, and I'll show you what it looks like when they're dry. Okay, so they've been painted, and they've had a chance to dry. I don't know how good the camera's going to focus on that for you. What I'm going to do now is we'll take them and I'll check them for light leaks. And if there's no light leaks, I'll go ahead and I'll detail it, and it'll be all set to put the big parts together. You can see this part goes at the base of her neck. Looks pretty good. I was going to put it blue, but the more pictures that I saw of the Enterprise refit from the movie, it looks black to me, or like dark gray. And then when a light hits it, the dark grayish, but I think it's black. So anyway, that's what I went with. So let's go ahead and we'll work on this and put the details on. Okay, so I put the lights in, and as you can see, there's obviously a lot of light block that needs to be done. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put another coat of the paint on the piece. By the way, when it comes to passing the light wires through, when the photon torpedo tubes go in, I am going to have to pass it through here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill 2 holes, and remember, I'm going to have to light block it. So what I'll do is I'll probably put tape in there, and it'll be ready. Pass the wires through. So I'll drill a couple of holes in here and show you guys. Okay, so I drilled the holes, and it kind of looks like Bender. All right, forget it. Anyway, the holes are done, and there might not be a lot of light block because the holes are small. So when I pass the wires through, there won't be a lot for the light to leak, but we'll check it just to make sure, because the last thing you want to do is see light leak coming from the back of that. So, because there's going to be lights lighting up the windows. You can see the light strips, and on the bottom there's lights. So we're ready to move on to the next step. Of course, once the photon torpedo tubes are ready and we can put those in, then we can glue the 2 halves together, because as of right now it's not glued together. So we're waiting for that. All right, little update. I'm waiting for the photon torpedo tubes for the light blocking to dry. And man, I had to put so many coats on that, but I'll tell you about that when I show you. Anyway, I was looking at the Saucer Pylon, and I was looking at pictures from the Enterprise from Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and I noticed that there are lights on the side of her neck. I'm not exactly sure where they're coming from. I don't know if it seems to be like a reflection from space dock, but it seems to be with the ship even when it's in deep space. So this is the Enterprise, and I figured, what the hell, I don't want to skimp on this project. So what I did was I drilled holes, and I put a 1.8 millimeter bulb on each side at the base to try to give that spotlight effect on the side. The ones in the back are kind of gentle, and then there's like a sharp floodlight on the side. So I drilled holes, I wired the bulbs, I soldered the resistors on, and I just hot glued them into place. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reassemble the halves loosely, and then I'll fire it up and I'll see what it looks like. Alright, to give you a little bit of an update, I just powered it on. Well, obviously. You can see it's lit up. The connection is loose. But I think it's going to work. At first I was nervous because you could see the bulb. but it looks like it's slid up in the right place, and it's starting to look really nice. I don't want to turn it too much because it'll go off, but you can see the other side. When the connection is a little better, I'll be able to move it around better for you guys. But I just wanted to give you a quick view of what it was going to look like lit up. I think that has the spot, so we'll be able to move on. Now we're just waiting for the photon torpedo tubes to dry. Alright, so it took quite a few coats to get it to this point. The camera is picking up a little bit of light leak, but I'm at a total loss. I gave it like 4 or 5 coats of the black spray paint, a coat of the white primer, and I went over it with a paintbrush with the Testors black. There's so much paint on there right now that it took away a lot of the detail, but it's still bleeding through. I'm going to see what it looks like inside the chamber. And you can't really see it as much with the naked eye, but the camera picks up the light leak. Anyway, let's see how it looks. Okay, so this was quite the ordeal. There was so much paint on it, I had to actually trim it to get it in. I just dry fit it together right now. It's not glued. What I'm going to do is, I just wanted to make sure everything was going to work. There are some areas I'll touch up with the brush for the light blocking. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to super glue it. Actually, I'm going to be using crazy glue because I want it to stay together. And I'm going to clamp it. And I'll show you what it looks like after it's glued and clamped in place. Okay, while we're waiting for the glue to dry, I'm going to have to get rid of all this spaghetti. And everything will be connected and run down in just 2 leads, positive and negative. So, once that mess is taken care of and it's all in place, I'll show it to you and I'll show you what I did. Alright, so I trimmed down all the wires, soldered the leads together, and then soldered 2 leads that'll go down into the secondary hull. And it just went out, of course. Hang on a minute, I'm going to do a little more secure. Alright, it's a little more secure this time. You can see, push the wires up in there. I'll do it a little bit more when it goes to the secondary hull. Everything is glued. I'm going to fix the light leaks. Actually, I'm going to put the some plastic putty along the seam. And then I'm going to paint it. It'll be all set to mask off. I'm going to put in the little piece, and I don't know if you guys know this or not, but this little piece that goes here, the little black piece, is actually the photon torpedo vent. So I'm going to put that in next. Alright, so what I did was I took some perfect plastic putty and I did the seam because there was a little bit of light leak in the seam. And I did the back. Let me show you around the front. I did the front and I did the bottom. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let it dry and I'm going to lightly sand it, and once it's all smooth, it'll be all ready to mask and start painting. Okay, so the putty dried and I sanded it down, I smoothed it out, and what I'm all set to do now is I'm going to start masking it off and I'm going to start painting it. There are sections that I'm going to have to redo and put more white on, and there are sections that are going to be blue. I think I'm going to do the blue first, the duck egg blue, and I'm going to start masking that off, and I'll show you guys what it looks like when it's ready to paint. Okay, so I masked it off and I painted it, and it dried, and I obviously removed the mask. And now I'm ready to go on and paint the spine and the front. Okay, so I did the front part, and I only went up as high as the little indentations because that's going to be a different color. Let me try to get the camera to focus it on. I'll show you. But now we're going to move on to the back part. Okay, so I got that section painted. I removed the mask. And I can see now why, looking at Star Trek the Motion Picture, it's hard to see all these colors, because they're pretty subtle. I don't know how this camera's picking it up, but with all the spotlights on the ship, I can understand why I thought it was just all bright white and that was it. Especially like in Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, it seems that the whole thing is just glowing, brilliant white. But anyway, I did the blue part on the spine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let it dry thoroughly. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm probably going to touch up the black. You can see the photon torpedo vents. Putting it in, it took a little bit of the paint off, and I'm going to touch up a little bit of the light blocking over there. So that'll be the next step, but I'm not going to do that until the blue, the duck egg blue, is completely dry. Okay, so the paint had time to dry. I did a little bit of the touching up. And I did the underneath. I did the back. So it's looking pretty good. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to put on the decals. And once the decals are dry, then I can go ahead and put the top coat. So I'll go ahead and I'll put the decals on and I'll show you what they look like. Just a little bit of little tidbit for you. The Enterprise refit has the kind of greenish for the strong backs and all of the colors around the deflector dish and in the nacelles. The Enterprise A has more of the bluish color. I don't know, I really like the blue. Blue is one of my favorite colors, and I love the way the Enterprise A looks. But that's going to be a whole other video and a whole other project. So, we'll go ahead and we'll get the decals ready and put onto the saucer pylon. Okay, so I got the decals on, and you're going to have a little bit of patience. Well, at least I had to have patience to put the decals on. I said I'm not the best at detailing or doing models, but these were challenging for me anyway. I'm sure there are plenty of you out there that won't have a problem and it'll be easy. All I got to do is trim just a little bit of excess off the sides. You can see it kind of looks like a shark coming out of the water. Dun dun dun. Anyway, got the sides on. I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up. And a tiny, tiny, tiny little Enterprise sticker. It goes on the side of the photon torpedoes. You see the ones up at the top, following the duck egg blue line. As he trim the other side, I'll be doing that, and I'll show you what that looks like. Again, the door, the docking bay, and a little Enterprise sticker. So I'm going to wait for this to dry. I want all the decals nice and secure. I'm going to trim the excess off of that, and then I'm going to give it a nice clear coat. I'll show you what it looks like before I put the clear coat on. I'm just going to wait for the stickers to dry. The decals, excuse me. Just to make sure that they're perfect. Alright, so I trimmed the decals back a little bit. You can see they look a little more natural now. Let's see if it can focus. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wait for it to totally dry. Because these decals are pretty tricky though. They'll still move around even if they're just a little bit moist. And I just had to readjust this one. So I'm going to let it dry really good, and then I'm going to give it a top coat. And I'll probably give it 2 coats. Again, when the model's finished, I'm going to give it one final top coat, but I'm going to give it 2 coats because I want to keep all the stickers in place. I don't want nothing to move, and I want it to be, well, permanent actually. So when this is dry and I give it the first coat of the top coat, I'll show you guys what that looks like. Okay, so I put 1 coat on so far. And I'm going to let it set. And I'll see how that looks. So I think I'm going to put a second coat on. I'm hoping that it really brings out the Aztecing. You can see it's kind of showing out through there. So when it's dry, I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so I just put the second coat on. And I think I'm going to leave it at 2 coats. I'm going to let this dry. Dry really, really, really well. Let me show you the other side. The spray does bring out the Aztecing pretty nice. You can see the really nice. So when this is all dry, what I'll do is I'll light it up. I'll check it for light leaks, and if there are any, I can touch up the white or the black. And when this is dry, I'll show you what it looks like hooked up. Okay, so the clear coat has had a chance to dry. And give you a little look around. So let's go ahead and we'll plug it in. See, I'm happy with there's no light leak. It's looking pretty good. And kind of bring it around. So there's no light leak. Where I did the putty, I probably should have put more putty on because you can still see the indentation. But there is no light leak. So the light leak is gone. There's no light leak where the photon torpedoes are. So it's looking pretty good. So with that, it's all set to attach to the secondary hull. So, my friends, this one was a pretty long video because there was a lot of steps to doing this saucer section. I thank you for watching this video, and we're going to be moving on. Currently, I'm working on the base, and I'm not using the base that came with the kit. I'm making my own. It's going to be quite a project. And I'll be working to do the secondary hull to assemble that. So that does it for the saucer section pylon, or the neck, which is part 2 in the instruction build. And I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time.